What do you do when you are surrounded by a whole army, an army that is bigger than you, an army that is stronger than you, and an army that is most likely going to beat you and destroy you? I think we can take a lot of advice that comes from this chapter in Second Kings chapter 19, which is one of the more righteous kings we see in this chapter compared to all of the other wicked and evil kings that happen, that appear in this chapter. The king's name is Hezekiah, and Hezekiah is a very righteous king because he's one of the only kings that decides to turn to God in the situation that he is in. Many of us would probably given up, or we would have probably surrendered to this big army that was, if it was going to surround the city that we were protecting. But Hezekiah does something different, and he prays to God. And that is why he was able to win, not by his own strength, but by God's strength. Of course, this is from verses 14 through 19. And we see throughout this chapter, even in the beginning of this chapter, that prophet Isaiah comes to Hezekiah to assure him that he will be okay and that he needs to trust in God. Last chapter, in 2 Kings chapter 18, the king of Assyria, known as Sennacherib, comes and basically gives an ultimatum for Hezekiah, telling him to surrender. And he even sends a servant to tell everyone in the town of Jerusalem that we have beaten this many kings. We even beaten your northern kingdom, Israel. And so what is the likelihood that we are also going to come and destroy you unless you surrender? And so his call is basically to turn against the God that they once served and turn to the king of Assyria. Again, in chapter 19, he repeats this. He mentions that we beat the god of Ethiopia, and we have already beaten these gods, and Gozan and Haran and the sons of Eden. We've beaten all these kings. So we are this much strong. How are you able to beat us if we are able to beat all these kings that are bigger and stronger than you? Well, what the king didn't know was that the God that he was about to challenge is actually a real God compared to all of the idol or fake gods that they were challenging before. But I love how Hezekiah prays, even though he is grieved by this fact that he might be conquered, he decides to use prayer as a last resort. And this is what he says in verse 14. Then Hezekiah took the letter from the hand of the messengers and read it, and he went up to the house of Yahweh and spread it out before Yahweh. And Hezekiah prayed before Yahweh and said, O Yahweh, the God of Israel, who is enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God, you alone of all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Incline your ear, O Yahweh, and hear. Open your eyes, O Yahweh, and see, and listen to the words of Sennacherib, who sent them to reproach the living God. Truly, O Yahweh, the kings of Assyria have laid waste to the nations and their lands, and have put their gods into the fire. For they were not gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. Verse 19, but now, O Yahweh, our God, I pray, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, O Yahweh, are. The very fact that Hezekiah calls God, the God that he is praying to, the God of Israel, Yahweh, to listen, to incline, to open his eyes, to open his ears, is a sign that Hezekiah is making, a sign that he knows that the God that he is praying to is real, and that the God that he's praying to can make a change. Oftentimes in our life, we don't use prayer as a way to use to defeat the battles around us, and it often comes from human pride. Same like this king of Assyria, who relied on his own strength and relied on his own intuition. He thought, because I destroyed this many kings, that means I can also destroy Israel as well. He never used the counsel of God as a way to fight his battles. Very different than what Hezekiah does, who humbles himself and realizes that God does hear his prayers and that God can destroy the king of Assyria. I would not be able to go through everything here, but he mentions how God is alone. He alone is God. How God is going to hear his prayers. It's time to get up those prayers, get back into praying. It's time to maybe get that prayer mat set and pray and kneel down to God through whatever situation you're going to. That is the call that the scripture is calling us to do. Through any situation, through any battle, through any trial we have, we can always go to God because the line of communication is always open to him. When we're able to pray to him, that is when our battles will be beaten. Not by your own doing. You can try to fight your battles all you want, but you will never beat them. Only God can fight your battles. Maybe some of us have been very stagnant in our prayers, especially during the summer, and even I have been through things like that. But the most important part is to recognize that Jesus is the one that defeated our biggest battle, the battle of sin, the idea that we deserved the punishment. He paid it all on the cross. In the end, Hezekiah won. The angel of Yahweh would come and kill 185,000 soldiers, decimating the whole entire army of Assyria. That's the God we serve, the God who is able to defeat armies of mass sizes. So I hope this video helped you, and maybe it's a call for you to get back into praying. On that note, take care and God bless.